So before I can start sculpting this, I want to clean up a couple little parts of our topology. Now, when we first started blocking this out, we kept everything as simple and low res as possible. It helps us be really quick, make decisions quickly, block things in as fast as we can, but now we're ready to actually start cleaning some stuff up. So I'm going to turn off this subdivision, which I don't want, and let's leave the mirror on. And what I need to do is add some definition to the shoulder, to the knees and elbows, and this character needs something of a butt, which they don't have right now. And let's go ahead and start that process. So the first thing that we need is an arm loop. Now, running through this, there's not enough space. We can see from the profile of our character, it really stretches out, and so we need more geometry running into the arm. Again, kind of like my character block end, this is sort of a recipe. We'll talk a little bit next week about retopology and why edge flow is so important. But let's start by just selecting these rings outside of it. You can hold Control to speed this up, which will let you just click to the next one. And then we can hit Control B to actually create this little piece right here. Doesn't seem like we did a lot, but now what we have is I have a loop that runs through here. I have loops that run under the arm, over the arm, and around the body like so. This is actually pretty ideal for us. And while this is open, I'm going to go back into sculpt mode and just clean this up a little bit by pushing it to shape its form a little bit. We're going to work with a lot with the sculpt tools in a second, but this is a good time to just get a little bit of where I want my arm and everything to go. So that's good. And we can see that just gives us more space, and we're going to keep refining a lot of this as we go. But that's going to be the first step. Now let's do, let's give an actual butt here, because there's not a lot to work with. So what we need with that sort of gluteus maximus area, it's not big and it's not exactly round. It's got a little bit of a kind of potato chip shape to it. And we need space for our, I want to turn off my snapping and I want to turn off my weld. But we need space for sort of a crack, and we want to space out and start to manually round this grouping of overall edges, because these four are going to become the start of our butt. It doesn't look like much right now, but if I select these as a shape and then I can take them by themselves, I can do a couple things with it, but what I like to do is just extrude and shrink, and then I can come in with my sculpt tools and sort of soften things up and shape things out. Now, it's going to be, it can get hard in some of these spots to get exactly what you're looking for, because, let me get my clipping on. I don't want it to push over. Sometimes you get a little too close and it won't let you push any further, but this looks like it's working okay for us. And depending on your character, you might not need this. A lot of this anatomy is going to get covered up by our by clothing that we're going to build into it. But it might, this is a good just structural thing to understand because it's a big part of the shape of the overall legs. And again, the sort of butt comes a lot lower than we tend to think. And just check the reference of my anatomy guide to go in there. We can always smooth shade this and see that it's still blocky, but it's giving us the form we're basically looking for. And what's important about it is as we subdivide, it's going to help us clean things up. If you get this thing, this means sides of this are pushed in too far. So it's always good to come in and check. Let me turn off clipping and see kind of what's going on. So I'll take this whole middle loop by alt clicking. And let's see if I can just move it a little out. So like moving it everything out of the way, turn clipping back on, and then just GX and moving everything back to the center. So sometimes that it doesn't play nice with the sculpting mode. Let's get down to the next region, and this time I'm going to get the knees and the elbows. So the knees should be this sort of section right here. And what we need for, let's hit 2 to get to our edges. And what we need for our knee overall is enough loops to work with. And I think, you know, you want to make sure you're about halfway down. And this feels like it should be a little bit lower, but I think this should be, I can work with this. So I feel like that loop's not in a bad spot. It's always good to check your reference. But what I'm going to do is Control B, and I want to use my middle mouse scroll to set one extra edge. And if you don't have that, we can always, you know, set it from there. But this scroll is going to let us take these two now and similarly hit Control B. And I'm going to set this to one edge loop. Let's stick with 2. So I'll stick with 2 here, these 2 edge loops. And now I'm going to merge this with this. So merge at last. This to this, do the same thing. This shape, I'm going to hit G twice, GG, which sort of slides it along its shape. I'm going to turn off subdivision for now because it just makes it slower. And I'm going to delete these 2 edges with Control X. And I'm going to push this kneecap out a little bit. This doesn't seem like much right now, but what's cool about it is it actually helps build the knees. Not only does it give us enough structure, if I turn off optimal display and I show you the wireframe, it's going to do this so that as we add more anatomy, it helps the leg flow because the flow of the edges goes from the top and under the knee and up and under the knee. And that's actually really important. And it gives us something we're going to need to make our deformation, our legs work, is more geometry on the front and less on the back, which is going to help carve the knee inwards. And it's also going to be something nice to sculpt with. So let's do the same thing now. Find the elbow. So right about here, do the same deal. Control B. These 2 on the back. Control B. And this is all stuff that it is a formula now. We consider this kind of anatomy solved because we've been working on characters for so long. Different people are going to have different solutions. This is the one I'm showing you because I think it's literally just the easiest to set up right away. But it's not, it's what I call close enough modeling. It's actually pretty good. And so you don't need to do too much more than that. Hit GG to slide it, and GG to slide it. And then we can see it's going to help us create the shape. So just a couple little things that are going to help when we're sculpting define more of the musculature that we're looking for. I'm also going to want to add in 1 or 2 extra loops. Let's put 2 in down here at the wrist. And I think it's a good idea to round out some of this shape down here. So I'm going to take these edges, like in this flow, and SZZ, lower them down a little bit, just so that we can get an extra edge loop in here. And I'll do with 2, Control B, just gives me those extra edge loops because those are areas we're going to need some deformation. And I think I might consider, let's do the same thing here because I want at least 1 more edge loop running through it under the leg, kind of like I have with this arm. And when you've got to this point, go into the sculpt mode. We can turn on wireframe, and then we can just do some sliding of everything. I'm going to turn this off. And so we can soften, but there's also a tool in here that we can use. It's called Slide Relax, and it sort of pushes things around. But if we hold Shift while Slide Relax is on, it's going to try to maintain our overall shape while pushing these apart from each other. And this is really helpful because we want to space out some of our geometry in a couple key locations, but we still want to maintain the shape. So we're just trying to push these, even them out a little bit, especially in some of these spots. I want to keep those relatively together, but I do want to slide those up a little bit. Yeah, something like that. And then we can push some of these a little further apart. I'll keep them together. So this is a good start now. We have a base mesh. It's got good geometry. It's going to be subdividable. And we're going to use this to actually sculpt the next stage, which is sort of our overall form and musculature.